Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Definitely. A little prayer.
right, sir. Thank you, sir. JFJS Research Center is has got a wonderful opportunity to introduce and have Dr. Sajid Bashir, sir. And I don't have to introduce to maximum of you. Each one of us are aware of Sajid, sir, very well. We have been, I should say, attending, participating in one of the sessions, research better. And I think now he has come up with a different name altogether. So before we can begin with the lecture, which sir has very nicely given me the topic, that is philosophy of research management. And to be very honest, the moment he gave me this topic and I shared it with some of the scholars, sir, I was amazed to find out that each and every scholar, thanked me for this particular topic. And on behalf of all of them, I'm also thanking you for giving us such a wonderful topic for this particular masterclass lecture series, sir. And to those of you who are not aware of Dr. Sajid Bashir, sir, I would like to tell you all that he's a very well-known professor and working at Namal University at Pakistan. He has over 20 years of teaching experience and, holding designations and taking care of the senior management positions in different universities at Islamabad. Apart from being HOD, Associate Dean, with his, many articles, research papers, which I had been seeing getting published in many of good journals, and I'm very happy that yes, we are all going to hear the most important topic which is required for in contemporary research topics also side by side. Now he is a professional trainer and a master trainer for the Namal Executive Development Center, and then he had been training a lot of executives from different organizations in Pakistan and Islamabad, I should say, and even associated with some of the companies like PwC USA, then Siemens Germany in Germany, and these were especially, he shared this information that they were the World Bank funded projects. Under him, I should say there were 15 PhD scholars who completed with the thesis work and more than 150 master's level theses. So I think I'm not supposed to speak a lot about it. He is like a teacher for all of us, and let us go ahead, welcome him with a round of applause, number one. And number two, sir, now the ball is in your court altogether, and I invite you for sharing the information as well as the knowledge that you have chosen for the day, and that is the philosophy of the research management. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful topic also, once again.
Uh, Thank you very much, Dr. Ramani, and thanks a lot for these kind words. Definitely, it's a pleasure to be at this forum. I think around 1 year ago, we were having regular sessions on different topics, and from here I got sort of introduction of Dr. Ramani, Dr. Neeraj, and many other people in India and all other countries. And since last time we are connected, we discussed different issues on research. Even we have arranged different sort of combined seminars and workshops as well. So it's really a pleasure to be at this forum and talking to sort of scholars. I can see from different countries. Even I was just looking that there is a professor from Mexico as well, from I think Bangladesh, from India, from Pakistan. So that is basically sort of the magic of this online classes or online discussion forums, that now sitting at one place we can talk with different people sitting in different countries and share our experience. Today's topic is very important, and whenever we start research class even at different universities here in Pakistan. This is something which I focus most, because what I have seen that when people they plan to sort of do research of any kind, like either it's a dissertation or thesis work, or it's a research paper, they generally start with different things. So those things are important that I'm going to discuss, but normally the order of those activities is not correct. So what I have seen, that people, they start with in my area in HR or organizational behavior, that we need a research model, sir, so can you help us in having some novel model, or can you help us in having some sort of research gap? So people or students generally are more eager or worried about these things, and they skip very important steps or points, which are basically the foundations of research. And since we ignore those points when we complete the research activity, the foundation of that research is weak. And as a result, majority of the papers which students write or do a lot of effort and hard work, then they are sort of frustrated that now why people are not publishing it. So I simply tell them that since you have ignored some very important things, very important steps, which basically are required to do research, or even I think we cannot say research or research unless it is not supported, or there are not strong foundations of theory and philosophy. Even the degrees which many of you are pursuing, PhD, that is Doctor of Philosophy. Now, why the philosophy of subject is important to understand for any type of degree, what is the requirement and why we need to do it. So basically, philosophy is a kindly mute your mics, Dr. Ramani, if you please see if anyone mic is open, you mute it.
I take care about it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So even this activity of thesis, what I was saying, that from where we should start and what should we do sequence wise, that is very important. And without understanding philosophy, so I was saying that philosophy is an independent discipline in itself. That's a different thing. Then there is application of philosophy in each and every field. So you can find out philosophy of physics, biology, mathematics is a very key sort of
Excuse me, sir. Your mic is muted.
Ramani ma'am, maybe you have muted Sajid sir also.
I think now you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
The problem is that philosophy is apart from this thing that it is an independent discipline or a subject. There, for each discipline, there is a separate branch of that discipline which we call philosophy of that particular subject. Philosophy of physics, chemistry, biology, philosophy of even philosophy of management, and there is also a philosophy of research as well. So we need to understand the fundamentals of philosophy, and then we have to apply it to different disciplines. Then basically we can start our research from basic foundation on which we have to develop or build our whole building, or we have to construct entire research on that particular thing. And unless we don't go for that thing, maybe many of you, if you have done research earlier, you must have completed research papers. Maybe some of them even have got published, or you must have completed thesis as well. But conceptually, people who don't understand philosophy, they're never clear about research. So today I have tried to sort of highlight some important areas of philosophy which are about research, and especially in last 2 centuries, especially after 1950s and after 1980s, what are the recent trends which are emerging in philosophy and how they are affecting research. Because in itself, understanding philosophy or philosophy of management research, that is an entire semester course which I've taught in different universities as well. So the main focus of today's webinar, because we've got 2 hours, in 2 hours I can simply explain to the audience that why philosophy is important, why we cannot do good research without philosophy. So once this point is clear to you, then your total orientation towards research, it changes. So I have seen I have sort of trained many hundreds of students in using this methodology, and they're doing very good research, publishing in very good journals. And apart from that thing, they are clear about research. What is the research? Why we need to do research on a particular topic? Which methodology I'm going to follow, and why I'm following that methodology. We don't need a questionnaire in every situation. We don't need interview in every situation. We don't need primary or secondary data in every situation. That basically is to be linked with the basic philosophy, the methodology, why we're adopting this methodology. And that methodology is linked with the philosophy, that why I'm conducting this research. The other part of philosophy, which I was just discussing after 1950s, that has gained so much prominence or importance, that is about linguistics, the philosophy of linguistics. Now, people generally ask why philosophy of linguistics in research. So that I'll also briefly explain that what is the importance of linguistics philosophy in research, any type of research and management research, because our results, whatever we find, we report it in words, we write it. The issue or problem which we identify, we have to write it down, we have to present it. And everything is to be presented in words, in some language, maybe in English or any language. So what is the meaning we are basically conveying in our writing? How we are presenting the concept to others? How, number one, we identify some issue or problem, how we interpret it, and then how we report it. Everything is about linguistics. That's why after the work of you can say it started from Russell, but in later years his a student Wittgenstein and Quine, and in recent time we can say Chomsky, Noam Chomsky. All of these philosophers, they are basically known for their contribution in linguistics philosophy. And this thing has affected the entire, we can say, the discipline of philosophy, all the concepts. And now we can say this has become the most important part of philosophy. And in research, again, I think if you don't understand what you are writing, why you are writing, even each word, what should be the combination of words, how I should report it, how to write in some abstract way, I don't think you can do quality research. So I'll start my presentation, which will maybe for some audience, it might be some sort of unusual way of starting a research webinar. But this is the way what I feel we should start studying research or learning research, because once you follow this step, then once the basic concept of research is clear, then I think if you do any type of research, you know from where I should start. So you know the sequential steps, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how I have to proceed. So I'll start my presentation. So I guess this is visible to everyone.
Yes, sir. It is uploading.
It's not started, sir. We can't
Maybe it is loading.
see right now.
Now it's
Yes,
visible,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir. Now it is
Visible,
visible.
sir, now. So it's visible.
Okay. So let's start what my basic point is about philosophy, or why we need a sort of philosophical underpinning for research, any type of research. This topic is for any type of research, but specifically then we can relate it with management. But this actually is about philosophy of research, and with some sort of emphasis we can say on management as well. So if there are students from any discipline, this presentation I can say it will work for them. So how generally we start research? We say, I just discussed, sir, I need a model. So 90% of students, they come to me, sir, just give me a hint, a very good research model, some sort of independent variable, a dependent variable. And so I need a sort of shortcut, or I need a gap. What is the latest gap which I should be working? If I work on that topic, that should be valuable, or I need articles, or I need data. So even I think most of you, if you are doing research as students, or even if you're teaching, you must have seen students. These are the common questions which students ask. While there is nothing wrong working on these things during research, but research should not start from these. That is the important thing. Yes, you need a research model, you need data, you need gap, you need supporting articles, but this should not be the starting point. You must be clear what you need to find, why to need to find, and how you will find it, which philosophy will support. So I'll start the discussion again with a sort of philosophical question, that suppose you're passing through a jungle and suddenly you catch a glimpse of something, you're not sure what is there. So a researcher is also like a person trying to find out something, and similarly, I've tried to give a similar sort of example. So when you sort of approach that object, you see this thing. So everybody can see it.
For the
No,
interruption,
sir.
but we are not able to see your moving slides. We are only on the first slide only.
Second slide.
You might need to enable the screen sharing option again.
Just a moment. Is it visible now?
It is loading, sir.
Can you see the picture now or not?
So no, only your display pic is
Not
visible.
yet. Still we can see the display.
The picture of a jungle.
No,
No,
sir.
sir.
No, sir.
My screen is showing that it is being shared. I don't know what's the problem here.
It might be when you're sharing the screen sharing option, you have to click on the entire window, and we might be able to see it.
Sir, if you want, you can mail it across to me immediately. Then I can run your presentation, sir, if you think that is the right approach. Or click on that, as Abhimanyu was telling to you, on the window option. present now, a window, and then you have to carry forward.
I can't share it. I don't know what's the problem.
Sir, once you can restart your system as well, then it would probably working, because it used to happen sometimes with me as well while taking classes. When I used to start my system, so it used to work then. Thank
So I need to log in again.
Sir, your system need to reboot your whole laptop.
That will take a lot of time.
Restart.
So I should.
Sir, you can rejoin the meeting again. So
Or there
you will be able-
could be an easy way of sending it to Ramani.
Okay, I'll share it with her.
Sir,
Hello,
but
sir.
in that case, I think you won't be able to use whiteboards for making us. If it was required.
If it is required,
Yeah,
okay.
hello, sir.
Let's see. Yes, please.
I think you share the window instead of just the screen.
But if I share it, I cannot
While
see the presentation.
if you share the window, then you open the presentation.
Okay, I'll try it again.
Okay, try that.
Sir, when you click on present now, you will be seeing three options: your entire screen, a window, a tab. You need to click on your entire screen.
I clicked it. Yes. Now.
Now you have to. There would be a pop-up window. On that pop-up window, there would be a small screen coming in. Click on that and share on share.
So now can you see it?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So I go to question again because that was a very important starting point. Now, so if you see this thing, what is this object? Anyone?
Sir, lion.
A lion is hiding in the forest.
Line.
He is seeing us.
It looks like line.
It's a hiding line.
Okay. So there will be a number of questions in your mind when you see this thing. So what can be the nature of these questions? Basically, I'm using a methodology basically used by a renowned philosopher, John Searle. He basically take this example and move ahead to basically explain the need to study philosophy and specifically for doing research. So you're passing through a jungle and suddenly you catch a glimpse of something you're not sure what is there. The color draws your attention, it pulls your attention to the location and you say, wait, there is something there. You say, look, it is a tiger, and then you ask some further questions. Is it a large tiger or perhaps a small friendly tiger? Is it about to leap or it is about to run away? So these are the questions definitely that would come in your mind at that time. Now there is a relation between you and the environment that stand in causal relations to one another. Before this thing, you are simply moving in a jungle, you are seeing different things. Maybe you are not deeply or minutely observing different things. There's a mic, I think there's some sort of distortion again. Now you're observing different, kindly mute your mics. So you can visually interrogate the scene to access those various characteristics which allow you to single out the object. So your main target from entire jungle, so much area, so much trees, you are now only focused to one thing. What is this thing? It's a tiger, it's a big tiger, it's a small tiger. What is the color of this tiger? Whether it will jump over me or it will run away. So there will be a number of questions, and now you have singled out one object from entire jungle. Your brain tries to solve mysteries at a time. Now you call a friend who is nearby to report what you have seen. So maybe you can call for help. But how you will report it? What have you seen? What words will you use? How will you report your reality to a person unfamiliar with this reality, sitting in another environment? That person is sitting in another environment, maybe in office, at home, maybe sleeping, and you suddenly call that person, look, I've seen a lion. It seems that it might attack me or it will run away. How your friend will perceive what you are saying? So this basically, I just used the word name of philosopher Wittgenstein. He basically worked on these areas to clarify or sort of identify. He called there are two books in his entire life. He just wrote two books, and that basically became the foundations of linguistic philosophy. One was the Tractatus of Philosophy. It's in German languages, and then after 30 or 40 years, he wrote another book. So he basically describes different terminologies like different language games and also a picture theory, that you are seeing a picture, you are in a different sort of environment, your reality is different, and you are reporting that thing to a person who is sitting or living in a different environment, in a different reality, maybe in office, and you are reporting that thing. So the most important thing is that what you are seeing, how you are reporting, and how the other person is perceiving it. So just relate it with research activity, that whatever you observe, whatever you find, what is reality, what you are looking, you are singled out some problem or issue, and now you want to report it. So it will be very important which words you use, how you report it, and how your words will be interpreted by others. This is the main concern of philosophers, especially in linguistics, that the words basically, these are, if a person who cannot understand my words, it is simply a noise. But this noise is not something abrupt. It is coming after a very sort of a complex process in my brain, in my mind. And then I'm uttering or using these words, and I'm communicating these words, and all of you are listening these words, and then that information is being processed in your brains, and you are getting a different sort of interpretation what I'm saying. So the most important, one of the most important activity which I feel most of the researchers ignore is that how we sort of convey to other person what we found. So there is a very popular word, eureka, which a scientist used when he found the principles of buoyancy. I have found. So this single word basically describes a number of things, that what the feeling at that time, how he uttered or said that word, and how it was interpreted by others. So moving forward with the same example, the fundamental question being asked by philosophers for thousands of years, we can start from the very beginning, from Socrates, or even from pre-Socrates era, even from sophist, or maybe Pythagoras, or all the philosophers even before Socrates. They were mainly concerned about one thing: what is the reality of this phenomenon? What I'm observing, what I'm seeing, what is its reality? Is it something true or fake? maybe there's a big picture of line, and there is a sort of a bit darkness, and you cannot differentiate, like in different countries on highways, there's sort of a big picture of a police car. They display it on the roads, and people coming from far away, they see that, or maybe there is traffic police, and they slow down. So whether the reality it's true or fake, how do I confirm it's true? So if there is something, how to confirm it's true or it's fake? What tools I should use to inquire? So if I have to confirm that there is reality out there, which tools will help me to confirm the reality of object? And then how to report it? That is the most important part again. So I think we need to understand the importance of finding out reality at first stage. But equally important is reporting it. Because whatever you have perceived, whatever you have seen, whatever you have found, that is your experience. That is restricted in your brain only. That is your reality. And if you are unable to tell others, or if you cannot tell others in a correct way, so even Wittgenstein says that if you cannot say it correctly, then silence is the best option. When you don't have appropriate words to say something, when you cannot express something correctly, the best strategy is silence. The problem with most of researchers is still they write, still they use words wrongly, maybe not correctly, sort of reporting the reality, what they have found. And that is further another person, when that person interprets those findings, maybe it is your thesis supervisor, it is your examiner or reviewer or editor of a journal, or any person, that person interprets it differently. So you think that I've explained everything, and that person is saying I have sort of understood nothing. So this mechanism, I think it needs a lot of practice and clear understanding that how I have to convey my findings, my reality, what the thing which is I have found, my eureka moment, what I have found, how I have to report it. How others will believe I'm not telling a lie, a very important point. You'll say there is a line, the other person, how he will believe it. So there are a number of factors attached with this statement. Why you are saying it, and which situation you are. How to use appropriate words, language to report reality. What are the most appropriate words? So some linguistic psychologists, they say that words are basically like treasure. So we should not sort of waste them unwisely. We should not write too many words. So a basic characteristic of quality writing is that it is written in abstract manner. Use of very few words, but still the whole message is conveyed. Moving forward, again, I'll relate the example. So what is, there is a world out there, how we see it, how we interpret it, how does language relate to reality? The sentence don't just kind of exist all by themselves, autonomously of universe. They are generated by human beings. They are always generated in actual situations. They are always generated for a purpose in order to do something. They are either false or true. Research is finding out reality or reporting it. Whatever we report is science. It's true or false, depend how we interpret reality. So I'll again build my case for this argument that why philosophy is important. There are two important factors for which we need to understand philosophy. Number one, we have to find out reality of anything. So the famous example of Newton when he was sitting under a tree. So he basically wanted to find out reality of objects falling towards earth. What is this? What's this happening? Why it's happening? why the apple is not moving in any other direction, why it is always falling towards earth. So this is question number one. What is the reality of this phenomenon? Then there is a process or mechanism which we call research method, relevant tool based on the research question. Which type of reality I have to find out, which type of tool is required, how data will be collected, the research method is followed, and then he has to report to others. So that reporting can be different in different fields. So when Einstein found the reality, he reported is as E is equal to mc square. That was basically the interpretation of the reality which he found. So scientists, luckily, they have got this benefit that they can maybe report whatever they found after their whole life's effort in few sort of alphabets in one equation, E is equal to mc square, or what is the value of gravitational force, or like Newton's laws, F is equal to ma. So the entire concept becomes very simple. And everybody, when even after 400-500 years after Newton's death, whenever a physicist reads F is equal to ma or E is equal to mc square, he's clear that what actually Newton found and how he reported it, and now how to interpret it. But the problem with social scientists, especially in management, even psychology, or all these domains, is that we normally don't, we are sort of not so much blessed that we can report our results in form of equations. We have to write it down. So the word which I use, abstract writing, E is equal to mc square, is the best example of abstract writing. But when you have to write in words, how to write it? So the second part is reporting it. On one side, you find out reality, then there is a complete process. I don't call it a step. It's a process, which we call research method. There are different activities. We move one by one in these activities. And again, then at the end, philosophy is linked with reporting the results. So that philosophy, which we call the ontology, about which is about the reality of the world, to find out reality, ontology. And then there's a process of research, and then we move to linguistics philosophy, how to report it, how what I have seen, how I can report it. So that basically completes our research. Now, moving forward, I'll discuss this slide later about language. So why we do research? So I'll firstly discuss the first component now, about reality, and then we'll be moving ahead with, if we have got time, about linguistic as well. Mainly I've discussed the main concerns of the linguistic philosophers, and if you sort of want to, it's a very interesting field, I think, amazing. I have seen some lectures of good philosophers. So they basically say in last 100 years, almost 70-80 years, the philosophy is sort of spellbound by linguistics or language philosophy. There are so many important discoveries or new concepts developed in this area that most of the modern philosophers, they basically discuss or work on this area to find out new things in philosophy. So to find out reality, again, if we look at the example, the line which you have seen, so if you want to find out what is the reality of this phenomenon, that there is a complete branch in philosophy which is called ontology. The ontology is basically about this thing, that how we can find out reality. It is about nature of reality and what are the methods to find out reality. So philosophers in the ages have been trying to find out reality using a variety of methods, and these have evolved over a period of time. Some I'll discuss, maybe 4 or 5 important philosophers who sort of changed the direction of philosophy or ontology as a whole. And research basically is a scientific way to find out reality using different techniques. And as I've discussed, that we report our finding to others through words. So equally important is the domain of linguistic philosophy. So how it started, basically what we say ontology or the reality. So the first person normally about whom the whole credit of, or the person who is called probably the first philosopher of the world or founder or father of philosophy is definitely, you must have heard about Socrates. So I'll briefly discuss about the contribution of these philosophers, what actually they did. So Socrates in his life did not write anything because he was of the opinion that basically writing the concept of linguistics, that writing basically sort of pollutes the concept, which basically whatever you are thinking, you cannot express it correctly in words. And there is a long debate about Socratic argument that why he should not write. So all his uh, work or whatever he said was noted by students, and his mostly everything whatever we know about Socrates, it is written by Plato, his student Plato. So his technique of finding out reality at that time in Greece was that he used to sort of go in different streets and different markets. And by the way, technically we call it a method of hypothesis elimination. If you can see this first bullet, the Socratic method is a method of hypothesis elimination. In the better hypotheses are found by steadily identifying the elimination those that are to contradictions. What was his method? He used to go in market and ask question, basic question. For example, what is justice? So at that time, the society in Greece was sort of uh, they considered them well educated, a developed society, and they thought that whatever we know is something up to date and perfect. And he used to ask questions about from those people that what is your concept of justice? Why we're in this world? What is sort of morality? What is ethics? So other person would have replied like justice is this thing if there is equality in society. So he would say that equality is this thing, it is not justice. What else? So the other person, this is a hypothesis elimination method, other person would give whatever that person know about justice or ethics or morality. And ultimately Socrates, because of his wisdom and intellect, would take that person to a point that the other person sort of is exhausted and would say, no, I don't have any other answer. So then he would inquire, you're living in this society, you're at this position, you are up maybe some high up in government or any sort of minister or at this position, and you don't know about justice. And at that stage, people realized about their ignorance. So as a society sort of full of people having a lot of confidence that we know everything, whenever Socrates asked a question using his Socratic dialogue, this is, by the way, the amazing method of learning or even teaching. And I've seen that in developed countries, even in the beginning classes, class 5th, 8th, or in maybe in 10th class, they teach using a Socratic dialogue method. This is till date one of the best method to teach someone. Basically what that person know, one by one you ask that question, and ultimately when that person says that these number one, you can find out that how much that person knows, and secondly you can tell that person, no, this is not the meaning of justice. If you look at with this angle or this aspect, that is justice. So gradually his method, it became popular in entire Greece, and there were he was very popular in young generation. And the people who are supporting the system or status quo, they become worried or terrified. And the main allegation on Socrates at that time was that he's polluting the brains of young people in our society. And they were right, I think, in saying this thing, because now they started asking questions. Otherwise, they used to accept everything as it is. This is society, this is justice, this is morality, these are our traditions, and everything is in perfect order. Now they started asking question about everything, the authority of the government, different organizations, and the social issues or problems. And that became a problem for sort of the people in power in that society. And ultimately he was forced to drink hemlock poison, and he was killed. Basically, he was the first person maybe who was killed, who sort of willingly gave his life, because there were different options. If he would have sort of asked for pardon or anything, they would have forgiven him, but he did not accept. He said, no, I won't compromise in this thing, on this thing. And ultimately he died, just to protect or sort of support the method he developed to find out reality. Then his students, the first student like Plato, he worked a lot, and his basically theory is very important in this regard, especially if we look at, sorry, just a moment. Can you see the screen now? The slides?
No, sir, not yet.
No, sir.
No, sir.
There's a problem, I think.
So you need to click on present now, then your entire screen option, wherein you are a dialog box will open. Then you have to click on the screen in that and share now. Yes, sir. It is
Now you
visible
can see
now.
it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Plato's method is very important. A very important thing again is that these were basically their concepts, and it's not necessary that everything is right. These were basically their philosophies, and many of them were sort of there is a lot of criticism on them as well, but they gave a new way or new way to find out reality. So his two theories, there's a lot of work, but I'm basically discussing very briefly the most important contribution of these philosophers to find out reality. His first concept is theory of forms, which is again a very unique idea. So what Plato feels is that there are two parallel worlds. One world in which we live, and there is a world which is sort of perfect world. Everything, whatever is we see in this world where we live, is basically a replica or copy of that thing which exists in real world. So basically what happens is that the job of a philosopher or maybe a researcher is to identify different things from that world, based on his intellect, based on in research, and then a sort of produce a report, a replica in this world, which is not the original world. So what is the implication of basically his findings or a theory of forms? That as per his opinion, everything, whatever we have found in this world using our sort of philosophy or research or science, that basically is already available in a parallel world. And the main job of researchers or scientists is to gradually discover those things, and they bring those things in front of us using a technique. Basically, his concept, everything in empirical world is an inferior manifestation of pure, which exists in abstract. Experience through our senses come from interaction of pure form of the matter of the world. Result is an experience less than perfect. True knowledge can be obtained only through reason, rational thought regarding the forms. So forms exist there, and now when we use our rationality and reason, we use any technique, even today we call scientific technique. As per Plato, the main contribution of that person is that he has introduced something which exists in real form, and we just see that thing in a sort of replica in this world. So basically, scientists or philosophers are very important people, because they show us those things, we use those things which otherwise, although they exist, but we are unable to find them. So that to some extent is something logical. If some scientist has sort of developed some equation or formula, he basically derived based on his effort or using reason or logic, which we are using, the entire humanity or people or any medicine, which he found, and now everybody is using it. So his concept was that that thing already existed, and his main contribution is that he found that thing. And now what will happen if we sort of accept this concept, that till the last day of this world, people will continue finding out things which exist in actual form. And that's why the job of philosopher or scientist, it will never end. So even today, people, they are working, they're doing research and trying to find out something which exists there, and they just through their work introduce it to us. The second important thing which he introduced, again, I think especially if we relate it with our social life or the way people live in this world, is the allegory of cave. Demonstrate how difficult it is to deliver humans from ignorance. Now, in Allegory of Cave, Plato basically claims, I hope this picture is visible, Plato's Allegory of Cave.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So he suggests that basically, if you see on the extreme left side, there are some people who are sitting there in chains, and they are looking at different images. And basically, these are some individuals who have never in their life, they have seen light or sun. So what happens is that some people, there is a big lamp or light, and some people, they pass some objects in front of that light, and there is a shadow of that object on the wall. And the people who are there in chains, they see these shadows, and for them, this is the world. This is the reality of world, a world having shadows only. So this basically, he represents the ignorance, the people who don't have an opportunity to see the light, to have knowledge, who don't use reason. So it's not necessary that you are literally or practically sitting behind a wall in a cave with this chain. So people, millions or maybe billions of people who are free in this world, having no chains, but they don't use the reason, but they don't use the logic. So as per Plato, They are basically these individuals in chain, and whatsoever other people show them as images, that is the world for them. So a philosopher, a person who uses reason, he comes out of this cave. And he also suggests that even on the right side, you can see some of them are in sun. When somebody goes out and sees the sun, first thing is he don't believe that there is something called sun and there can be so much light possible in this world. That is basically a sort of wisdom or knowledge. So initially, when somebody starts using logic or reason, the way the knowledge starts illuminating the mind, and that happens with every person who starts using reason or logic, that is something magical. And that person don't believe that what's happening with me, so much light. You can imagine a person who has spent 40, 50, 60 years of life, who has never seen a sun, and the only light he has seen is a shadow of a light. Now when he's standing in front of sun, what can be the feeling of that person? So that can be feeling of person who has never used reason or logic, and now he starts using it. He will find that will be out of the world feeling. And Plato further says that if some of the person who have gone out and seen the sun, they come back to cave and tell those people that this is not life, these are shadows, they won't believe him. Even they might kill the person because he's lying. They will say this is life. How can there be a sun? How can there be so much light? So this is an amazing allegory which basically tells us that the difference between the finding out reality, those people who find out reality of something, and those people who spent entire life looking at shadows. And that is something which we must see. Every one of us also should see this thing, that whether the life which we are spending, or so far the life which we have spent, you will find out most of the time there were just shadows which we have considered this is the world. And if that's the case, you need to look for those people who have seen the sun. Number one, who have seen the sun. And the second most important thing is you need to believe them, that yes, there can be a different world as well. I need to come out of this cave. I should get rid of these chains. And then you can find out reality. This is something which I think is very important for every person doing research. Most of the people, even when they do research, they try to do work on shadows only, what other have done, what others tell them. Unless you don't go out, observe the sun like you have seen that line, and don't report it what you have seen, you're just reporting shadows, and that can never be a reality. So this is a very interesting thing. I think we can discuss it for hours when I teach philosophy, and we discuss the allegory of cave. It sometimes takes many classes, but this is something which if you can read it, there's this is a complete book, or I think a chapter of book of Plato. So it can change. It has changed, and it has capacity of changing lives. Once you're clear, you have to simply analyze your life, because unless Socrates, unless the Greeks, they have not seen the reality, they were comfortable that we are living a very good life. And unless these people who are in this cave, they have not seen the reality or sun, they are comfortable with their life. Like many of us, we are comfortable with our lives, that we are living in a real world and this is the reality. This might not be the reality. When you use reason, when you use logic, then maybe the reality which you will find out, that will be entirely different than what you have seen in these shadows. So this is something I call amazing work by Plato. So this is sequence. Socrates taught Plato, and Plato taught another big name, Aristotle. Aristotle again is the founder of modern formal logic. Even the logic which we study today and its branch syllogism, that was developed by Aristotle, and he basically sort of negated Plato's concept of theory of forms. He said, no, there is no other world. Everything truly exists in this world, and that we can find out through individual observation. And he is rationalist and empiricist. So a rationalist is a person who is using just rationality, and empiricist is a person who practically observes something, do experiments, and find out something. So he said, whatever you have to find, you can find out using empiricism. You should conduct experiment, you must observe that thing, and there is a sort of debate going on even till today in philosophy, that empiricism is correct or rationalism is correct, or there are different branches as well, other isms in philosophy as well. So this debate is still going on, that the people of science, they focus more on empiricism, while the other people in philosophy and other domains, they normally call rationalism is more important. Mind employs to gain knowledge, rationalist, and objects of the rational thought was information from sensory experience. Empiricism, reality for it was the world around us, not the objects of mind, which could be just fantasy. So he basically even at that time categorized different disciplines in different categories, sciences in different categories, and also found the causal relationship between things. So he said that there are different type of causes when we try to find out reality, like material cause, matter for which matter of which it is made, whatever we are looking at, what is the matter. Formal cause, form of pattern of object, what it is. Efficient cause, force that transforms the matter, who made it. So what was the original matter, and then what actually this thing is, and what originally this thing was, and how it is transformed to this thing, from one thing to another thing. And finally he talks about purpose, why exist. So whatever we see in our surrounding, as per Aristotle, these basic questions should come in our mind. We should be concerned that what it is made, and what actually this thing is, what is function, and how the form which we are looking currently, how it is transformed from another form, and why it exists. And the second important, I think, his contribution is about logic, in which he basically developed a science of logic, syllogism, and different type of arguments, which we call the premise and the conclusion. So there are simple logic questions here, but there are again, when we move ahead, we can find out different complex questions as well in logic. So if we say all humans are mortal and all Greeks are human, these are the basic premises, and what is the conclusion? You will conclude that all Greeks are mortal. This is the most simple basic questions which are used in logic. No reptiles have fur, all snakes are reptile, no snakes have fur. So I think any student of philosophy needs to develop this type of analogy in mind, because it helps you to relate different things in your mind, and ultimately you can sort of develop a map in your mind when you see something. Okay, if this is the cause of this thing, and same thing is happening because of this cause, what can be the possible result of this thing? In that context, the logic helps. From the logical tool developed by Aristotle and careful observation made and generalized, Aristotle built a complete system that explain the world as it is. So using this method, you can basically explain the whole world, its existence, how it exists, why it exists. And his system shows the power of reasoning and the danger of premature generalization. Mostly when you reach at the third statement, if you don't use logic, the generalizations are incorrect, or in other words, whatever the reality you have found, that can be a false statement. Now I think we can stop here for a while, because now we are moving to another era from Greeks to modern philosophy of Western philosophy started in 1500 something, but mainly it was sort of promoted by Descartes. But up till this point, I can take few questions. We won't spend much time, but if there are some questions or confusions, I think we can take those questions, and then we will discuss some modern philosophers starting from 1700-1800 and some recent contributions, and then I think we can conclude the lecture that basically why philosophy or how philosophy helps us to find out reality. So if there are any questions, Dr. Namni, we can take those as well now.
And you can answer directly.
And if there are no questions, we can move ahead. So what the
I just
participants suggest?
two hands only is reason. One is Abhimanyu. Can you unmute yourself and answer your query?
Good afternoon, sir. So my question is, isn't the perceiving the information in the first place is far more important than communicating it to others? Like an example, if I'm not able to understand myself as a researcher, how I would be able to communicate it to the others?
Yes,
So,
definitely. Yes. Any other
yes, sir.
question?
So, like it should be the it should have more weightage.
As such, there is no sort of distinction in literature or philosophy that what should be having more weightage, but definitely the starting point is to find out reality. That's why I said then there is a process and then you report it. So just finding a reality, yes, it is very important, because firstly you must be clear, your method should be sort of robust method you have used, and you have used a scientific method, and there will be different questions about those things. Up till this point, yes, this is the starting point, because if you don't have anything to report, then what actually you will report? So that is the secondary part. In that context, we can say yes, definitely the more important thing is to find out reality and then to report it. But if we cannot ignore the importance of second point, because if you have sort of, if Newton or any scientist would have found all these laws of motion or anything, if they had not reported it, there was no utility of that knowledge. So it's also important that it should be disseminated, and disseminated in a correct way, in a manner that the other person is able to perceive it correctly, understand it correctly, and then it can be used for sort of a benefit of general audience. So yes, you're right that perceiving or finding out reality, that is much more important. You must use the right method to find out reality, but then reporting, it comes at the second phase, and that is also an integral part of science. You cannot find something like in ancient times people used to have formulas or different things, but they don't report it. And even today we don't know how these giant structures like pyramids were built or different things. There are different questions about that time, because they did not share it. So today it's important to find it and then correctly report it.
Sir, I have a follow-up query. Like, is reality the reality? Like Einstein deduced there is a like black hole something. So whole of the universe was against that phenomena. Like Einstein is talking nonsense. It is not the right thing. After so many years, like this year or the last year, the scientists verified a black hole is something. It is made of this particular thing. So at that point of time when Einstein formulated it is the reality, he communicated to the world. We as individuals, we did not confirm it. It is the actual reality. Today, after so many years down the line, we are saying yes, he was right. So at point time zero, is reality the reality? How we validate it?
Yes, definitely. A very important question again. The reality for a certain time period, it remains a reality unless it is not refuted. We'll see a philosopher's work, Karl Popper, who said that rather than finding out truth, we should find out reality of something through falsification, whether it can be negated or not. So normally, when some concept is presented at a certain time period, and this concept fascinates a number of philosophers or scientists or researchers, and everybody starts working with the same methodology, with the same concept, and for a certain time period, that remains a reality for entire world. And then there comes someone and who says, no, this might be wrong. The methodology, even in philosophy, when we see the work of David Hume, he basically suggested that rationality is important, but more important are our passions, important are emotions. So if we'll discuss that thing as well, that is, so if I want to do something, I won't see it's logical, I'll see whether I want to do it or not. So he gave a different concept, but after him, when Immanuel Kant studied work of Hume for maybe a lot of time, his philosophy remained dominant. Then he said no, the logic is more important, and he gave a complete process that how we perceive reality and how we report it. So our concern, I think, as a philosopher or scientist, there can be two sort of ways for working or doing research. Number one is that if sort of you feel like that this reality or whatsoever is being reported, this is correct, then people contribute in further developing that reality, explaining it more. And if you principally feel that the methodology or the reality which is being reported today is incorrect, then basically you can contribute by challenging it. So this process is going on from the day one. Hegel's method, dialectical method, he says that basically it's thesis and thesis and synthesis. That will, if we had time, we'll discuss that as well, that for every thesis there is always an antithesis. So the work of philosopher is to do synthesis. You must have all the information about thesis, what is reality, and all the arguments if there are against antithesis. And after analysis of thesis and antithesis, then it is the responsibility of a philosopher is to do synthesis. And that synthesis basically becomes his thesis, his point of view. And against that of point of view, some will give antithesis. And this is basically like a spiral, it moves on, and this is the way through which knowledge is generated. So even if a reality is falsified, that becomes a new reality. And that basically we call advancement of knowledge. This is the way to advance the knowledge. So it is a natural process. If something is being accepted today, it can be rejected after some time. If something is not being accepted today as reality, maybe it will be accepted after 100, 200, or 300 years, after people will say, yes, that person was right in this concept. So all these methods are part of ontology, even thesis and antithesis, and they are sort of rational or logical methods of finding out reality.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I think Madiha is waiting for, and she's raised her hand thrice. So I think, Madiha, this is your turn now. Please unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Thank you, Doctor. Sir, I really wanted to ask that whether reporting has an impact of self-awareness or emotional intelligence, the way we report a thing. Does it have some impact of what we which stage of awareness we are in?
Yes, Nadia. Again, you have asked a question which Noam Chomsky has answered very well. Because basically, he's popular about basically about this concept of linguistic philosophy. He basically says that whenever we are reporting it, it's very important to see who is reporting it. because there is a human behind reporting that information, and the person has got a lot of characteristics. So basically he has related the words, whatever we write, whatever we say, with the person, or if we sort of link it minutely with details of psychology, it is about personality, which type of personality that person is having, then even behaviorism, in which environment that person was raised, which type of experiences that person had, because two people living in different parts of the world, one person having a different experience, another person having a different experience. Based on those experiences, uh, number one, how they perceive a thing, there can be a difference, but especially when they will report that thing, there can be a lot of difference. So yes, the person who is reporting the result, that is also important. So that's why if we look at different dimensions of finding out reality, so on one side we have got empiricism, where people say that we should have we should conduct experiments or observe the reality and then report it. There is another branch which is called social constructionism, in which they say no, we also have to see the context in which it is being reported. Only the reality is not important, especially in social sciences. When we have to report something, especially about human behavior or anything, the context is also important, the environment, the culture, even if we go into further details, even the demographics, the social dynamics of that society, the culture, the customs, the traditions, all these things, they basically affect our perception. So when that reality is being observed, and we sort of are trying to find out something, they affect that thing. If we see today, these days, a very important thing is information. A person having more information will perceive reality differently. So there is a big gap even between people living in developed and developed countries about technology, that we call digital divide. So because of this digital divide, what Michel Foucault, in his discussion with Noam Chomsky, was saying that basically because of those lesser opportunities, lesser information, there is a sort of we can say the eyes of those person, they are closed. Someone has put hands on their eyes, and since they cannot see those things which people in other parts of the world they can see, because of the information they are having, the system of education they are having, the opportunities they are having. So that gap is immense. So one thing normally when we see a big gap between the creativity of developed and underdeveloped nation, this is one of the reason, because the people who are living in these countries, the information, the exposure to information, I think it is not 10, 20 or 30% of what a person living in a developed country. So that's why what reality they perceive, the things which they are developing, the way they are being trained to see reality, in many parts of the world, there is a big difference. And that difference is overall affecting the national level, you can say, productivity or creativity of nations. So person, yes, what we say, it's not the gun, the man behind the gun is important. Yes, it's not only the research, the person who is doing research, how is perceiving it. You will have to see, and you must read the work of Chomsky on this domain, where he has in detail related in 1960s or 70s. He developed this concept, and that is very popular, and basically is known throughout the world because of this work. That how the personality, it affects our perception of reality, and now how basically when we are talking, we are speaking, there is a difference between the argument of different people, how the personality affects that thing. So yes, this thing, personality, the person, his experience, his personality, it affects the writing or the words that person is using.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, I think we can move ahead.
Yes, we have one more question. Maybe we can take it up after the session is ended or after some time. So there is one more.
Yes, I think I'll try to sort of wind it up in next half hour. The basic
Okay.
concepts of latest concept of philosophy about reality, and definitely maybe we'll be needing some another session sometime to
Yes,
discuss
sir.
in detail the way forward or some latest concepts as well. But uh, I would request all the participants to relate everything with research. That if you don't see your research, you are doing it in maybe in human resource management or marketing or anything, whether you have sort of ever considered this thing, that which type of reality I am going to find out and what I'm observing, and how I have, whether I've used a logical method, whether I have used rationality or empirical method. So a big turning point was in 1500 something, when Galileo challenged a number of concepts by Aristotle. One of them is in front of you. So Greeks, although apart from Aristotle, who sort of encouraged people to do observe, but still they were not very happy or not very fond of experiments. They thought that because when we use rationality, we focus more on logic and rationality, on our own ability or intellect, and we don't sort of go for external. So basically, the knowledge after 1500 is divided into two parts. One is knowledge, the reality within what we know, and the external reality, what exists externally through experiments. So for hundreds of years, the world believed that the heavier objects, if we throw them from a higher place, they fall first and the smaller object will fall late. Nobody ever tried to do an experiment, a very simple experiment, just to throw two objects from height and see whether it's true or false. So Galileo challenged this thing. He said, no, if we throw them, they will fall at the same time. And people said, how it is possible? We have read in this book and this philosophy. He said, okay, let's do an experiment. So he went on this, I think, Pisa Tower, it is called. And he took two stones, a bigger and smaller size. And when he threw them from that, dropped them from that place, everybody observed that they fell at the same time. Now, that basically again gave a new direction, importance of experiments. And Galileo, not only this experiment, there was another belief of people in Greeks, or even in the time of medieval philosophy. Medieval philosophy is the time period from Greeks till the modern philosophy. You can say for almost 1400 years, there was a philosophy when there was more emphasis on philosophy of religion. And because of the importance or prominence of this philosophy, the role of a church in West and all other places, the religious institution and philosophy of religion, that was more popular in that time period. So if you see philosophy of different religions, you will find out that that basically flourished in that time period. If we see the Muslim philosophy, we can see the works of Imam Ghazali or Ibn Rushd and all these big names. That was in that medieval period. So the modern philosophers, starting from Galileo was a scientist and philosopher both, they challenged different type of things which people believed for centuries through simple experiments. And one belief was that sun revolves around the earth, and Galileo challenged it. And it was a part of their belief. It was maybe in their sort of books, religious books. And again, like Socrates, Galileo was also arrested and he was sentenced, I think, life imprisonment, and he spent his life in prison. But still, when he came out of the court, he looked at the sun and said, it does revolve. So you can arrest me or punish me, but yes, earth revolved around the sun. So Galileo's method, and before him Copernicus, he developed a science of astronomy and different things. So a new wave started which focused on experiments. And in this time period, the scientists, they were sort of influenced by the experiments of like initially inspired by Galileo. Then this person, Francis Bacon, he wrote this book, Novum Organum Scientiarum, the new method, in which the scientific method which we use today when we develop different type of hypotheses, and we sort of accept or reject hypotheses. Then very important concept, again, this is something which is a must read for any researcher. He basically says that if you find out, you want to find out reality, you have to come out of your mind, and there are different idols in your mind which you need to break. The idol of I think cave, idol of marketplace, four different idols he identified, that unless you don't break those idols, you cannot find out reality. And the reality for these people, this was the use of experiments, and we'll discuss later about the experiment method which they called positivism. And based on these things, the first person, we can say the father of modern philosophy, he's Descartes. Descartes categorically sort of developed a scientific method, uh, and his this these words are very important. Popular, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. So there was this question going on from Greeks, like I think Socrates raised this question, or maybe Plato. I think Socrates, know thyself, know yourself. And he basically answered that question, why I exist, I think, therefore I am. So the basic difference between a human being and a person or any other creature is that the proof of my existence is thinking capacity, cogito ergo sum. He developed his books are called meditations, meditation 1 2 3 4. The first meditation is about I think ergo sum, cogito ergo sum, that why thinking is important, why a person cannot be sure about anything, but one thing all time is sure for all of us is that we think. We are thinking. Even in this class, one thing where all of us is sure is that we are thinking. And I hope after this lecture, many people must be thinking that what we are discussing today, what is its value, what is its significance, whether I should study, or it is just wastage of time. No, I should use it for research. It is important, and this and that thing. Intellectually, especially these scholars of masters and especially PhD, they must sort of remember this thing. You cannot have intellectual maturity without a deep knowledge or sense of philosophy. That is 100%. Again, we cannot say anything is 100% sure or confirmed, but yes, in this case, I can say, because your argument, the way you talk, the way you give your argument, it can never mature without reading of philosophy. Which words I should use, how I should explain something, I should argue, how I should answer something. So for that, I think whatsoever you are studying, whatsoever area of specialization you are doing, you must spend a lot of time understanding philosophy. That basically can turn you into a true philosopher. Even your way of doing research, or whatever, if I can relate it with myself, whatever work I have done so far, I attribute it definitely to my area of expertise, but how I should do research, how I should proceed ahead, how I should see the world in organizational behavior or human resource management, everything is I think I've used the analogy or logic or rationalism developed by these people, and it has helped a lot. It has helped a lot, and especially why I talk about linguistic philosophy. When I studied about that thing, the way we report thing, the way we write, that totally changes, and that basically becomes a major reason your study is accepted or people appreciate it. The second thing, scientific way is developed in meditation too. That was method of doubts. So basically, you have to single out the truth. So he gives the example of a basket of apples, and there are the good and bad apples in this basket. So how sort of to find out the good apples, the method is to sort of take out the bad ones one by one. You sort of develop a criteria. These are the worst bad apples, so you take it into another basket, 1 2 3 4 5, and ultimately you will reach at a point where you will have only good apples. So like Socrates, Descartes in life was developed to was able to develop this method. And again, this is very important method. If we learn to develop a method of doubt, so what was his technique to sort of differentiating between what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false, what is good, what is bad. So if anybody used to ask any question to Descartes, he would sort of see what answer I can give immediately. So the things which come in your mind immediately, that is the most raw or common form of thinking, and that everybody can answer. So Descartes used to reject that answer. Even in his mind, he would say, no, this is something which everybody can answer, so that might not be a comprehensive answer to this question. Just like throwing out the bad apple. So he used to think alternate option. What can be the other answer? What can be the third answer? So you have to keep on going until you reach at a point where you can say, this is something which is comprehensive, and this is something most unique, and this completely answers the question. So just use this method in your communication when you're writing something. When I teach philosophy to students, I tell them to use this method if you have time in exam answering the question. So whenever you want to write something, and if you feel like this is something, the idea, most common idea, what can be the alternative, what can be the alternative, and ultimately you come up with something that is entirely unique, or the reality or the truth, or in pure form, that basically, like Socrates, what he said, that reality or truth, it lies within. We just need to explore it. We generally do is that if someone asks us to give apple, we give them the bad one, because that is the most easy way to pick it. So firstly, you have to pick those bad ones and throw them out, and give the something which is good apple, or the pure thought, or the thought which you using a method of. So I think this is again something which all the scholars need to study or read in detail, the method of doubts, that how basically to eliminate the things which you feel are incorrect, and then how to report it. Briefly, I'll discuss one or two people, because this presentation is a bit long. Hume, I've already discussed. He was empiricist. So after Descartes, Hume was inspired by Descartes, but he's developed his own concept. Although he was empiricist, but first time he sort of related rationality with emotions. Ideas are priori and represent universal bond between ideas that mark the cornerstone of human thought. Matters of fact are dependent on the observer experience. They're often not universally had to be true among multiple persons. Just Madhya asked a question, that is the answer by Hume. And most important thing is that what he in categorically term used, that reason should be the slave of passions. We do what we want to do rather what is logical. So the first important thing is the passion, or especially he categorized the passion in different, today we call them emotions, hate, love, and all these things. He categorized that emotions, that rationality or reason or logic is affected by human passion or human emotions, which was later challenged. But again, if we look at psychology today, we see that yes, there is a great deal of link between rationality and emotions as well. Emotions are very important in psychology or even organizational behavior. When Kant, now if we look at these philosophers, Descartes was French, Hume was from Ireland, I guess. Uh, uh, all of them are from Europe. That's why the work of these philosophers, or this era after medieval times, this is called the Renaissance period, the Renaissance of or revival of knowledge in Europe. In that time period, they focused more on empiricism, rationality, and rejected the religious, especially philosophy and all those things, and focused more on rationality and logic as well. So Hume, when Immanuel Kant, he's German, when he read about Hume, he basically said that the concept of Hume, whatever he wrote, Kant says that I have read his book for almost 11 years. I spent reading it. Now, if the book is clear to you, don't spend so much time in reading a book. Basically, there were different controversies which he was unable to understand, and ultimately he developed. Kant is undoubtedly considered one of the greatest philosophers ever lived. Maybe some people rank him after Socrates. He's the greatest philosopher, not only in this domain. He has worked in scientific or reality. He's mainly popular for his work in ethics and morality. And I think the entire, you can say, most of the constitutions of the world or countries are based or developed on Kant's concept of equality or justice or morality or ethics in the society. So it developed amazing concepts, but right now we'll focus on the philosophy of reality or ontology as well. He developed a concept of transcendental idealism. I'll explain it through a picture because these are a bit lengthy details. Now, what is his concept? So, can you see this picture, Kant's theory of knowledge?
Yes.
Sir, we can see.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So, as per Kant, transcendental or critical idealism, there are two worlds. One he called a noumenal realm or world, and the other one is phenomenal world. Phenomena, the word we use, phenomenal, phenomena. So in noumenal world, the things exist in itself. He called it dig and sit. There are things. So if we see in our surrounding, the things, they exist in itself. So if you can see something in front of you right now, a table, a chair, a book, a computer screen, a mobile phone, or anything, it exists in a noumenal world in itself. So there is a reality of all these things in themselves. So if there is a chair, that is, it has got its own reality, and things, whatever in is there in this noumenal world, that is independent of time and space. For example, the chair is not concerned that what is the time right now, even how much space I am covering. So if you look with this perspective, the entire world, whatever you see in noumenal world, they exist in themselves, and everything seems independent of time and space. But then comes a phenomenal world. You observe that thing. And this interaction, the mind imposes its categories on the data of experience. So you see that object, and there are, I think, 12 categories in which Kant, you can also search those categories in literature as well. He has divided the things. So now, when this noumenal world interacts with the phenomenal world, there is a processing in your brain. You categorize that thing. What is this thing? What is its color? How much space it is covering? And all these things. And even the time becomes important for everything. Even the understanding of time becomes important for you. Even when you are moving or walking, there is a lot of discussion about the sense of direction: right, left, front, rear. The world is independent of these things. The world don't need these things, the noumenal world. You're moving right or left, but you need them. So all these information, it is processed in your brain, you categorize them, and then you label it as something. This is a chair. This is a book. And the interesting thing is, Kant says that every one of us has got a different phenomenal world based on our mind, based on our thinking, how we see the world, how we view the world. So every person, when he looks around the world, his reality of things is different. He even goes up to this point, maybe nothing exists in this world, and we are just in our phenomenal world. We have developed some concept, and in this entire world, there is no one except me. And everybody, whatever I am looking, there is no noumenal realm or world. Everything my mind has created, just to emphasize the importance of your phenomenal world. How we see reality, that depends on the categories, our experience. And again, what I've discussed earlier while answering that question, what is my personality? What is my upbringing? How much information I am having? So if you see something which you have never seen, like Hume, I think, gives this example that if there's a child who has played in his whole life with toys made of cotton. So if he is given a ball, he will throw it towards earth and it will not bounce back. Now, first time in his life, you give him a ball made of rubber. And when he throws it towards earth, it bounces back. That is something new. Now, what will happen in his phenomenal world? That is something which is not in the reality of his mind. He has not seen that thing. And that will be something and which will raise a lot of questions. What has happened? This has never happened. What is this object? What is this is made of? Why it is bouncing back? And a person, his parents who have seen a rubber ball bouncing back 100 or 1,000 times, they will take it as something normal. So that is basically the difference between the level of exposure or experience. there are millions or billions of people, they don't have experience of many things. They don't know reality of many things, which is something normal for people living in many countries. So what they experience, what we experience, their reality and our reality cannot be same, based on this concept of transcendental idealism. So how they see the world, how we see the world, how every person among us see the world. So that is a very unique experience. We feel or believe, I feel that how I am seeing this world, everyone in this world sees things as it is. That's not the case. Every person sees everything differently. Even when you're sitting in a same room, in a same classroom, every student, I have conducted this experiment many times, and I just ask, just note down things which you see in this room. I have hardly seen, and I go for 2 or 3 rounds. Firstly, they write some things, then I say again, write some things which you have not seen in first attempt, then third, fourth, and third or fourth attempt, never I have seen any similar answer. In our deep thought process, deep down our thinking process, everybody sees the world differently. So reality of every person is different. Now the challenge is then how to generalize this thing. Science cannot work on isolated or independent experiments or independent realities. There must be one reality. How to generalize it, how we develop formulas, how we develop laws, and in social sciences, how we develop theories. So basically, philosophy helps us in that domain as well. That if a generalized experience of so many people is this, we can develop a theory. And theory basically goes on to do further for doing research. Mostly when we do research, we say, what is your underpinning theory? Theory is generally derived from philosophy. So if you look at different time periods of eras of philosophy, different theories were developed or derived from those philosophies. So this was Kant's concept. Now I'll skip and come. I think this can be our last slide. We have not discussed the isms, but this is a popular diagram, which if you have studied research methods, you must have seen it. There are different layers of doing research, and the most outer layer you can see is philosophy. So if you remove this layer, you cannot conduct research. That is a simple thing. You don't know what is the philosophy behind it. Positivism is basically about, if I briefly discuss it, realism is the world is composed of matter rather than ideas. Ideas are images of the real world. World is made of real material entity. So realist or realism believes that it's not like Kant. They say whatever is there, we are seeing or looking at it in a real time. It exists, actually exists. That's why it is called realism. Modernism or positivism, basically, that is also known as empiricism. They believe that reality can only be found through experiments, observation, and doing experiment. Unless you don't have data, you cannot find out reality. Then there is social constructionism. Again, I discussed briefly that reality can be found with the help of experiment and in the context in which somebody is saying something. So context also becomes important. And then there is a pragmatism, which again is basically focuses more on practical actions. So based on practical actions of individuals or experience, we can only find out reality. So all these topics need a lot of detail and discussion. But if we look at this diagram, the first thing you must be clear is that what will be the philosophy of my research? Whether I believe that without external data or without experiments, I cannot find out reality, or you believe like Kant that there is a noumenal world and phenomenal. So my reality, it will be different. from rest of the world, or you believe in realism, or you believe in pragmatism or social construction, that the context. So it will depend on the number one, the area, I think, in which you are working. For sciences, maybe in most of the cases, positivism or empiricism is most popular, because there can not be a sort of difference in reality. If you mix hydrogen and oxygen, the outcome will be water. But when you look at the social sciences, I think you need to be very clear that which philosophy is the most relevant, because that determines your approach. Philosophy is linked. This next is approach, whether I'm using deduction, abduction, or induction. So these are three approaches of doing research. I have a slide here, I think, in which this is basically the inductive or deductive reasoning. In inductive reasoning, you start from observation, then develop a pattern, hypothesis, and then develop a theory. So from a sort of basic observation, you go to a theory. While in deductive reasoning, we start. So if you link this process, you start with a theory, you develop hypothesis. That is the scientific method which we use, observation, and then finally we confirm it after data collection. So from sort of basic theory to we generalize it in deductive reasoning, but in that case you must do a sort of experiment, or you must have data to support it, and inductive reasoning. So which this basically depends on the philosophy, which type of. So if you are using positivist philosophy, in most of the cases deduction method is used. But let's say if you are going for social constructionism, maybe induction approach is more appropriate. And this guides you towards the method, whether it is quantitative, qualitative, multi-method, mixed complex method. That is something the researchers, they have decided in advance. Okay, I'll be using the quantitative method. Why? They don't have any answer. I've asked this question many times from different students, that why basically you have used the qualitative method? Why not quantitative? And the answer is that we wanted to collect data, and through questionnaires and all. Why questionnaires? Why not interview? Why not qualitative method? Because they were not clear about the approach, whether it is a deduction or induction. And why they were not clear about approach? Because they were not clear about philosophy. So if you are not clear about philosophy, it will affect each and every part of your study. Now, from the method, we further move towards strategy. If it is, let's say, a quantitative method, whether we'll do some sort of experiment, or whether it will be a case study, or let's say if it is a mixed method, then we'll be combining survey and sort of ethnography. This is a mixed method, so it will be linked with your the method side, and this further links it with time horizon, whether we need to do cross-sectional or longitudinal study. Cross-sectional study is a study in which we collect data just one time, and longitudinal many times. So what is the requirement? And finally, you decide about data collection and analysis. And generally, we start from the most inner core. I'll be collecting data using a questionnaire. I'll be sort of doing this analysis, regression, correlation, and these methods, and these are my hypotheses. We need to start, the order of the doing research should be correct. And unless you're not clear about philosophy, you can never do I also review research papers of good some very good journals as well. And in most of the cases, the reason for rejecting a paper is that the person who has done a research, maybe a very good research, he cannot link things. Where there might be the requirement of survey, he has used interview. Why? Because he was not clear about the methodological choice. And why he was not clear about the methodological choice? Because he used a wrong approach. Rather using deduction, has used induction. And if he has used induction, maybe on the back end realism was required, but he has worked on positivism. And these are things which are not specifically mentioned in any paper. Remember this thing. You don't mention that I'm using positivist philosophy. These emerge how you write the paper, how you report your results, your tables. They show that which approach you has used. So that's why I said once you complete your study, the language you're reporting is very important. How you report it, whether whatever you have found is supported by the words which you are saying, how you are writing those words, how the picture which you have seen. The most easy way to tell any person what I've seen, you just show this picture of this line. He will say, okay, I've seen it. But the problem with researcher is what I have seen, you cannot show it others as a picture. So that's why Wittgenstein developed this picture theory. These words basically develop a picture. So you have to use such words which can develop a true picture of the world. The other person, while reading your text, can develop a true picture what you have seen. So that's why it's reporting after this analysis comes. And I think for that, we need maybe an entire session just to discuss the philosophy of language, its importance, its different components, and maybe then it is clear. So to sum up today's lecture, you need to start thinking about the philosophical grounds or basis for your research. And for that, you need to study philosophy, not the entire philosophy. It's a very complex discipline. It takes a lot of time, and even these are quite obscure type of literature. It's very difficult, almost impossible to understand the writings. Even translated work of Kant, Hegel is, people say, most notorious in this domain. Nobody can understand what he has written. So that's why you need to find out some good books of philosophy, some good translations, and for some things like Descartes' Meditations and Kant's books, I think you need to read the translation. That will give you a lot of ideas about what philosophy is all about. And I think once you are clear about these concepts, whenever you'll do research, you will immediately relate your concept with, firstly with philosophy, then the correct method, and then you might be able to sort of develop a right path for conducting research. That I think should be done while starting a research. That what will be my way forward? This will be this is my philosophy. This will be my approach. This is the way I'll collect data, and this is how I'll sort of analyze it, and this is the plan through which I'm going to report it. I think what I have seen so far in a very short time, maybe in 7-8 years, I have successfully sort of supervised 15 PhDs, and they're doing very good research in their domains. This was the key method which I used for doing work. So whenever we sort of started working on any thesis or any project, or even people who are working with research, we start with this roadmap. Whether we're clear about philosophy, methods, and all these things, and then we sort of develop the timelines for that approach. What is the timeline when these activities will be completed? And then finally we spend a lot of time on reporting side, that how to report it, and which what technique or even philosophy we need to follow. I think I have repeatedly used Wittgenstein's name. You must read his work. Is Tractus, which he written in German language, but translated. Uh, these seem very abrupt type of writing, because philosophers write in their way, but that basically was his PhD thesis as well, dissertation, and which was evaluated by Bernard Russell and Roger Moore, I think, two most renowned philosophers. And so these are the works, sort of masterpieces, which I think all research students should read. That will entirely change your perception, number one, of the world, and especially when you go to philosophy of linguistics, because when I few years back started reading those things and worked on it, that totally changed perception of reality, how to see things and how to report them. So that is something guaranteed, that once you read these things, your way of seeing world, way of seeing problems, identifying the problems, reporting them, and then doing research analysis and reporting results, that will totally change the way you are doing right now. So for that purpose, it is, I think, a must for all the researchers to start with philosophy of research and then move ahead. Don't start from the wrong order, from analysis, data collection, or model, or primary or secondary data. And no, start with philosophy. Spend good time reading these philosophies. Try to clear yourself, discuss with some good philosophers if people are around, good teachers, and then I think you should start your research, especially the people who are doing PhD. That is very important, because you have time in PhD, that you should spend few months studying about philosophy. That will, I think, help a lot in subsequent years when you'll be practically doing research. So, Dr. Ramani, with these words, I conclude my session. If there are some more questions we can take, I think in next 5 to 10 minutes.
Yes, sir. There are one question by Abhimanyu, and Vidushi has also raised her hand. So very quickly, I'll take up the question by Abhimanyu. He is asking, can we say idealism as a reality of the things in themselves and independent of time and space and phenomenal world? They are same, like a half-filled glass of water, or they are separate?
Yes, idealism is another very important sort of branch or domain of philosophy, in which we live or we try to live in a world which is different from the real world. Or if I again sort of related with the concept which Kant gave, the transcendental idealism. For them, they feel like that this noumenal and phenomenal world, they are same. So this approach is used by many people, but in science we don't appreciate it that much like positivism or other approaches, because if we follow that particular approach, generally the reality of our world, in actually in which we are living, and the idealism which we try to follow, there is a huge gap. So it changes our perception of reality. How it changes perception of reality? We start sort of thinking or living generally in a world which actually is not a real world for us. You can take example of any this doesn't mean that we should stop thinking or working on idealism. Yes, idealism is very important to have something in your mind to achieve the best, but that should not become a reality of a sort of your life, that in a way that you say that this is my reality. So if you're living in India or Pakistan, and you feel like idealism, that this is a developed country of the world, and how I can sort of have this type of reality, that is important. But you cannot sort of, while staying here, you have to live in your reality and see the phenomenal world, and try to sort of get from that world, or in worlds of Plato, from that real world theory of forms which is suggested, as much as possible. So idealism is important to progress or move ahead, but we should sort of keep this in mind, that our reality is different from that ideal stage. We can move there maybe after some time, but currently a lot of work or effort is required to go there.
Okay, Abhimanyu, I think I will give the chance to Vidushi, and then we will take up your question again. Yes, Vidushi, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. It's wonderful session, and I am very grateful to hear you, because you are also mentor like for HRM and OB as well, and I'm from the same field, so I used to follow for the same. But with this, what I have understood with this lecture, because if we look at it is real. It's my understanding. I just want you from your side the confirmation whether I'm taking it wrong or right. It is about reality or the perception of reality for the for various individual. Because again, if it as you have taken the example of chair and table, the same table from two perspectives. See, sir, table is table for all time for human being, whether the human being is a small kid or the older person. But at the same time, table is different for ant, the rabbit, the cow, for us. So it's reality. So I'm a bit confused. It is a reality or the perception of reality, first thing. First question. Another question could be, sir, related to the philosophies like positivism. While studying about the philosophies, I gone through the positivism and post-positivism, where I feel like post-positivism is again very much related to realism and interpretivism. So I'm a bit means unable to bifurcate in the differences. So I want your take for this. Thank you.
So the good thing is that you're confused. That is, I think, in philosophy we take as positive thing, because I think Einstein said that when you start with uncertainty, you end up with some certain thing, and when you start with the certainty, you definitely will end up with uncertainty. So confusion basically shows that you have read about these things, and that's why there are questions in your mind. The first question, which you said, that perception of reality, yes, this is a very popular sort of statement by leading psychologist Kurt Lewin, who basically said that it's not the reality, but perception of reality that matters. We see whatever is based on our own perception. So every person in this world has got a different type of reality. So as per him or many psychologists or philosophers, there is no absolute reality in this world. Reality is something relative. So in that context, if we see, if we look, even you have discussed about OB and HR, when there was discussion on organizational politics, the more popular concept is perception of politics, which was basically based on this statement by Kurt Lewin, that the perception of reality is more important than reality per se. So in that context, I think when you discuss about chair or table, I think again it will be linked. I think Kant has resolved this issue to a large extent, that you have to see it in two perspectives. One, the reality of thing, and secondly, what is this thing for me? So if you are seeing a table, and if a child is looking at a table, definitely, but the perception is not same, because that will depend on your experience with table. So for me, maybe table is more important for writing, or a table helps me if I'm working in office for different things. For a child, it is maybe a piece, something, you see, children, they sort of take support of table, and they walk, they play with table. So that's a different thing for a child. the utility of table for both of us is different. Similarly, what is your experience with that particular thing, or how it is linked with your perception, that determines more of your reality. And there's still a sort of controversy among philosophers and even psychologists as well, because in psychology we see there are two schools of thought. One is behaviorism and another is cognitive psychology. So one group focuses more on experience, and another on internal state of your mind. So everything, I think, it should be taken as something relative, as an individual. That question definitely is important, and how to generalize it, that how every person believes that this is a table and everyone sees it as a table. What is the method, how to develop a theory, and how to develop some equation, and how to develop a law. That requires basically another method through which we generalize things. But at individual level, definitely the perception, it matters more. And I think after Levine, this thing is clear. And in last century, if we see even studies in psychology, that perception, it matters more. The second question about positivism and post-positivism, positivism and realism, again, there is a sort of mix findings or controversy among philosophers. From, I think, especially from modern philosophy, from Descartes onward, all the time we see that different schools of thought, they worked, or they existed in parallel. So one school of thought, while they were focusing on positivism, another school of thought, they emerge with social constructionism, or some they start working on relativism. And parallel, I think in 1970s or 80s, the postmodernism started with David Derrida and Michel Foucault and all these people. So at a time, we cannot say that which sort of philosophy is right or wrong. No philosophy is 100% right, or no philosophy is 100% wrong. It depends which type of problem you have identified for your research, or what problem you have identified, and what is the most relevant type of philosophy which can be used. That, I think, is more important, rather than discussing that postmodernism or post-modernism that is more dominant or more prevalent. For me, it's more important that whichever type of research I'm doing, whichever type of research I were to conduct, which type of approach is more important, which philosophy is generally going to support my study more. For example, when we do research in HRM, OB, or in psychology, we go for experiments as well, we go for surveys as well, we go for interviews as well. But since the nature of this subject is such that we cannot ignore the context, you cannot say that employee working in IBM and employee working in any local organization in a country, they have got the same perception or same performance standards or same type of behaviors. So there is a difference because of context. So the philosophy practically, which Geert Hofstede promoted with discussion on culture, that culture is the most important component of reality, and you have to sort of relate it with the outcomes. So I see, for most of my study, social constructionism seems more appropriate. But in some cases where we only focus on experiments, maybe positivism, it becomes a dominant. So I think we must have knowledge of all type of the philosophies, and then there should be a sort of interplay, which philosophy is most relevant. There are people who sort of stick only to one philosophy, and they spend their entire life like they are so much inspired or mesmerized by that philosophy that they don't think anything else. Just I said that the linguistic philosophy in last 70, 80 years, most of the philosopher, there was a sort of wave of the importance of language and words, and all the literature which we see in postmodernism after 1970s and 80s. Major philosophers of today, they are more inclined toward the importance of, they sort of even try to define ethics and all these things using the linguistics. So it will depend on your personal inclination, or your personal philosophy which you appreciate or like more, or I think more better approach is that which philosophy suits best for my research, that should be used.
Yes, sir. Any other question? Okay. Abhimanyu, yours would be the last question now. Kindly unmute yourself and you can ask, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So last question, sir, for the day.
Okay, ma'am.
Can we say that reality is more grounded in sciences, natural sciences, because due to the fact facts exist in them, than in social sciences due to interpretations?
To some extent, yes, because there are we have to then differentiate reality into two categories: absolute reality and relative reality. In sciences, I was reading a paper of some in organizational behavior, which is basically about industrial psychology. So that person wrote that God gave all easy problems to physicists, and that was very important, because the physicists, their work is, once they find out something, that becomes a law. So if Newton developed a law in 1600 or 1700 something, law of gravitation, or first or second or third law of motion, it is valid, although there are changes in different sciences as well, but it is valid for 500 or 600 years or 700 years. But in social sciences, whenever any theory, that's why the difference, main difference is that we never use word law in social science. We don't have any law in social science. So when we study psychology, we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, we have equity theory, we have social exchange theory. We don't say social exchange law or equity law, just because of this thing that it's not about absolute reality. Even if that theory is working on 99% cases or 99.99% cases, there is still some exception. So we cannot have absolute reality in social sciences. That's why in sciences, I won't say it's easy to find out reality, but once they find reality, it's easy to generalize or easy to make it a universal law. But in social science, there are so many sort of issues or problems. Even when you find out something, immediately there is some sort of critique or such things that people, they will say that no, you have not correctly interpreted the reality. So in social sciences, I don't think we can ever have absolute, we can never find absolute reality. In that context, yes, the concept of reality is more applicable to sciences. Still, we have to keep working to find out reality in social sciences, whatsoever extent or level we can find out. What is our capacity, to what extent we can go to do experiments and find out reality, that we should keep doing, and that basically will keep on advancing the knowledge.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, a lot. And that was the wonderful session I could ever have conducted in my master class series 1. And now it is my pleasure. And in fact, I should say I'm very happy today that, yes, this particular topic has been given to me, suggested from your side, and it kicked off very well. And I think all of you who are present here, to summarize the entire session in just 3 sentences, sir has given you introduction to various philosophies, number 1. Number 2, dichotomies. I think nobody could have gone ahead and made it so clear by taking up each philosopher. He has chosen the most important philosophers, and he has very clearly bifurcated the dichotomies which are existing. And these are the dichotomies while you are going to make a choice for your research philosophies, as he has shown in the onion of the research as given to us by Mark Saunders et al. In 2001. I remember it very well when I was interacting with Mark Saunders, sir. And, at that time, it was just between positivism and interpretivism or realism. However, Sajid sir has really showcased to you all how to look at it. And it was indeed a true philosophy in management research. So, sir, thanks a lot for giving us such a beautiful way to understand the philosophies and the way we can start off. And all of us, in fact, most of them who have not yet, I know in India, though they are aware of it, they don't use it, as you have correctly said. So with this introduction, I think now we are aware of it, how to start off and how to introduce them even in our publications also, sir. So with these words, I really thank you for giving us some of your valuable time on a Sunday, wherein, it is meant for a Sabbath or a holiday for all of us. So I thank you, and we will look forward to invite you once again, sir, for a much deeper understanding of the philosophies or maybe something else also.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramani. It's always a pleasure to interact with you. Yesterday, I also received a text from Dr. Neeraj as well, and he was very happy that I'm again conducting this session. So, inshallah, I'll be available whenever I have time and you conduct any session. And this is something which I love to teach, the philosophy. This is something which I feel is missing in most of our research classes or research degrees. So all a different type of, even for positivism or social constructionism or specific domains, we can have separate sessions, and even or linguistics, because this is the area in which I am trying to work these days and study a lot about linguistic philosophy. So inshallah, whenever you call, we can have another session as well. And thanks a lot, everyone. It was really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. And Nisha, one of my other very close, good colleague of mine, has raised a question. I think she has raised a hand, so I'll just give her an opportunity. Nisha, quickly, you can unmute yourself and you can ask sir whatever you want to ask him.
Good evening, sir, and good evening, ma'am. Actually, I'm from the IT field, so can you just guide me how I use philosophy over there? Also, I got the points that you have shared with us. So, can you just guide me on this? How I apply this in the IT or the CS
Yeah,
field, sir?
that's why I have not specified it to any specific field, because
Yes,
even
sir.
in IT, if you want to find out, number one, I think you should try to find out some good books on philosophy and its application in sciences, and specifically, if there are some good books specifically for IT and computer sciences. But the main process for all disciplines is same. I think in IT field, the most relevant approach can be positivism, because in most of cases there are experiments, different type of studies, a series of studies which you people conduct, and then you move ahead, and maybe in a case of for developing some sort of new program or maybe hardware, there must be some methods of experimentation or experiments. I'm not as such much familiar in that area, but I
Yes, sir.
feel that this sort of social constructionism or maybe relativism, that is not relevant to your field. In sciences, most of the people, they go for positivist approach, which or empiricism, in which they conduct experiments and then try to find out reality. That will be the most appropriate for your domain.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot, Nisha. And I will get back to you. Nisha, there are, because I come from this area, There are a good number of philosophies, as Sir has shared with us. Descartes, rationalism is there, and he has already given you the hint about the social constructivism. That is also there. Then you can look into the postmodernist philosophy and see what they have to say. Then during explanation of his allegory of the cave, he wonderfully has said that there is difference between technology and non-technology. That is the wonderful way that you can use Plato's Republic. That is the book from where the entire interpretation, a chapter is there on the allegory of cave. And you can use that philosophy, which is called as ideal, theory of forms. And you can definitely go ahead and you can use it in IT department also side by side. So there are a lot of
Sure, ma'am.
philosophies which are present for IT department. I will share it with you also after discussing with Sir, and that would be wonderful for all of us. Okay, thank you, Sir,
ma'am.
once again, and I will
Thank you,
get
sir.
back to you once again with more discussions on these things also, Sir. Thank you,
ma'am.
Sir.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care
you.
and
Thank
have
you.
a wonderful weekend and
Thank
great
you very
Sunday
much.
evening also.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
and
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot to
Thank you
all
so
the
much, sir.
participants.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
Shia,
you.
thank you. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank- Bye. Allah.